The power hook. Let me state something controversial right at the start. Your best mental fortitude is not found in human support systems, not in a friend's shoulder, not in your family's endless advice, and certainly not in social media motivation. The purest mental resilience emerges when you are completely alone, at your absolute rock bottom. Have you ever reached that terrifying point where all the support you knew suddenly disintegrated? The job is gone, the relationship is over, the bank account is low, and the worst part, your phone is silent. No one is calling to ask, "Are you okay?" This is the moment of total isolation, where you are forced to face the harsh reality of self. In this crushing moment, our natural instinct is to panic. We desperately look for temporary human patches validation, temporary fixes, or outright escape. But what happens when those patches wear off? You realize you only have one option left, one constant that remains, a reliance on the infinite and unchanging. The critical promise. This video is not just a sermon. We are going to critically dissect divine resilience through the lens of modern psychology. We will unpack the science behind the most advanced coping mechanism, why total dependence on God is the ultimate mental survival strategy when every human system fails. We will treat faith not as mere emotion, but as an indispensable psychological pillar. Let's begin with the foundation. What exactly is resilience? The American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. Crucially, it doesn't mean you avoid pain. It means you possess extraordinary adaptive capability. Traditionally, human resilience is built on three key pillars. First, social support, family, friends, community networks. Second, coping skills, your learned abilities to manage emotions, usually through structured problem solving or mindfulness. Third, optimism, the cognitive ability to project a hopeful future. The critical flaw. This is where the vulnerability of the system lies. When the crisis is catastrophic, total loss, deep betrayal, or chronic despair, these three pillars can collapse simultaneously. Social support burns out, gets exhausted, or simply disappears. Coping skills feel utterly inadequate when trauma overwhelms rational thought, and optimism becomes hollow platitude when reality is fundamentally shattered. This phenomenon is understood as the fragility of external locus of control. When you anchor your hope and stability entirely on external resources, people, money, status, you are guaranteed to be brittle. Because all human sources are finite and fickle, reliance on human aid often leads to a second blow, the initial crisis, followed by the deep wound of abandonment. The crucial question remains: if human pillars are inherently prone to collapse, where do we shift our anchor? We require a pillar that possesses three non-negotiable characteristics: eternal, consistent, and limitless capacity. A pillar that never tires, never leaves, and whose resources are always available, regardless of your failure or circumstance. This brings us to introducing the divine dimension into our psychological equation. We will now see how faith, often dismissed as mere belief, is actually the most sophisticated and scientifically beneficial mental survival mechanism available. Now that we've critically examined the frailties of human support systems, let's explore the divine alternative. This is where we transcend traditional coping mechanisms. When a man has no one but God, he's establishing a unique psychological structure: secure attachment to the unconditional. In attachment theory, we need a reliable, consistent caregiver, an attachment figure, to feel safe. Human attachment figures are inherently flawed and finite. Divine attachment, however, provides the ultimate secure base. It is a relationship defined by stability, consistency, and endless capacity, which psychology recognizes as the ideal foundation for emotional regulation. The second critical element is the redistribution of locus of control. When facing total crises, the pressure to control every outcome is crippling. We shift the burden from a limited internal locus, our own finite power, to an infinite locus, divine power. This is not giving up the highest form of mental efficiency. By ceding control of the outcome, you are dramatically reducing cognitive load and associated anxiety. Psychology observes that radical acceptance of what we cannot change is vital for mental health. Faith takes this further, providing a reason for acceptance. The belief that there is a larger, benevolent purpose teleology behind the pain. This transforms pointless suffering into meaningful growth. Now let's analyze cognitive restructuring within this context. When isolated, the mind defaults to cognitive distortions like I am worthless or this will never end. Divine belief forces the mind to engage in positive The narrative shifts from I have been abandoned by everyone to I have been stripped bare, to rely only on the source of all strength. This restructuring is not merely wishful thinking. It is a profound act of neuroplasticity, the consistent practice of reliance through disciplined prayer, dhikr, or meditation physically carves new neural pathways. These new pathways bypass the emotional centers dominated by fear and anxiety, connecting instead to centers associated with peace and gratitude, even under duress. Let's look at the transcendental coping mechanism. When you are truly alone, what is your most accessible tool? Prayer. Prayer is a highly sophisticated form of emotional discharge and resource seeking. It externalizes stress without requiring an imperfect human listener, and it connects the individual to a perceived infinite resource pool. The critical distinction. Divine resilience requires active engagement, not passive waiting. It is the commitment to radical acceptance, pillar 1, and positive reframing, pillar 2, that makes the spiritual act psychologically therapeutic. It's an act of will to trust a higher order when the current chaos defies logic. This integration provides the answer to the loneliness crisis. The solitude becomes a sacred space. When you are stripped of human attachment, you are not weak. You are simply being prepared to fully utilize the only attachment that truly guarantees survival and meaning. So, how do you operationalize this divine resilience when you're alone? How do you put faith into actual psychological practice? We need 3 concrete pillars that translate spiritual commitment into mental strength. Pillar 1. Radical acceptance. The mental surrender. Psychologically, the first step to healing is accepting the reality of your suffering. Spiritually, this means accepting that your hardship is a divine decree kata, or will that has a purpose beyond your comprehension. This stops the endless internal war you wage against what is. Stop fighting the reality. Start utilizing the faith. Pillar 2. Cognitive reframing suffering as purification. Don't seek meaning from the pain. Apply spiritual meaning to the pain. Frame the difficulty as a purification process. Furnace designed to burn away your dependence on the finite world and refine your connection to the infinite. Psychologically, this shifts the experience from punishment to training. Pillar 3. Consistent gratitude practice. Even when you lose everything, the consistent act of listing what you still have access to, breath, sight, and most importantly, the divine connection activates the reward centers of your brain. This is the simplest mental hack. The belief in a higher good fuels your ability to find something to be grateful for, even in the deepest void. The critical caveat warning. I must be critically clear. Faith is a pillar, not a substitute. Do not engage in spiritual bypassing using God as an excuse to avoid real-world responsibilities or serious mental health care. If you are facing severe depression or trauma, seek professional help. Divine resilience works best when it supports a healthy, functioning mind, not when it replaces necessary medical intervention. RECAP. When you are stripped of all worldly comfort, you are actually being given the greatest gift, the realization that your true strength has always been external to the finite world. True resilience isn't about being strong enough to carry your burdens alone. It's about being wise enough to hand those burdens over to the infinite source that never tires. The crushing feeling of having no one is, therefore, an illusion. It is the veil that hides your ultimate, unconditional connection. Embrace the solitude, not as a punishment, but as a mandatory passage to discover the ultimate secure base that human psychology desperately tries, but often fails to build. Powerful CTA. This is a deeply personal topic. Primera, YNT, to know. What was the absolute lowest moment in your life where you felt you had no one? And how did your spiritual or internal reliance help you bounce back? Share your story of divine resilience in the comments below. Let's make this comment section a place of shared, evidence-based fortitude. If this integration of faith and critical psychology resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives. Check out this video, next link, next video, where we discuss the psychology of grief and finding hope after total loss. Thank you for watching.